All right, if you've ever tried to eat healthier, you have probably been told you need to balance your omega-3 and omega-6 fats. It's a topic that can get super confusing, right? You hear about ideal ratios, good fats, bad fats. So today, we're gonna cut through all that noise and find out what the science really says. Let's get into it. So here's the question we've all been wrestling with. Is the ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 fats like the secret key to better health? For ages, it seemed like the answer was a clear yes. But as you're about to see, the science has definitely moved on. To really get what this whole debate is about, we first need to properly introduce the two main characters in the story, omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids. The most important word on this slide is essential, and it means exactly what it sounds like. Our bodies literally can't make these fats from scratch. We have to get both of them from our food. They are completely non-negotiable building blocks for our health. Okay, so here's where that whole ratio thing even comes from. Think of it like this. Inside your body, omega-3 and omega-6 are basically rivals. They're in a race, competing for the same prize, these enzymes that help convert them into useful molecules. And that biological competition is the entire basis for the ratio theory. But how on earth did this idea of a perfect ratio become such a big deal? Well, the story really gets going when we look at our own history. The argument really hinges on our past. The theory goes that our hunter-gatherer ancestors ate a diet where omega-6 and omega-3 were pretty much balanced, a nice 1-to-1 ratio. Now fast forward to today, and the modern Western diet is, well, it's completely lopsided. We're talking something like 15-to-1, sometimes way higher. Omega-6s are just dominating the plate. And when you see it on a chart like this, the change is just, whoa. It's stark. Our diet got totally skewed. And for a very long time, this dramatic shift was blamed as one of the main drivers of chronic diseases. And then you had studies come out that put some really powerful numbers behind the theory. I mean, this major paper from 2002 claimed that for heart disease patients, just getting their ratio down to 4-to-1 was linked to a 70% drop in total mortality. A 70% decrease. With claims that big, it's no wonder the omega ratio became health gospel. But you know how science is. It's always questioning, always poking. And as researchers took a much closer look at the ratio, the whole story started to unravel. The entire theory was really resting on one big assumption, that having too much omega-6 is bad, mostly because it's supposed to cause inflammation. So is omega-6 really the villain we all thought it was? Well, let's just say Harvard Health Publishing does not beat around the bush. They looked at the evidence and called the idea of cutting back on omega-6s hogwash. Yep, their word. They argue that these fats, the ones in things like nuts, seeds, and healthy vegetable oils, are actually good for your heart. And here's the crucial part. Modern research has basically torn down the main arguments against omega-6. Studies now show eating more of it doesn't actually raise inflammation markers. That old fear? Turns out our body's really bad at converting it into the pro-inflammatory stuff anyway. So now you have major players like the American Heart Association actually advising against cutting back on purpose. This quote from a 2018 paper just nails the new thinking. It asks, what is the usefulness of the ratio, which is good divided by good? And that's the whole point, right? If the evidence now shows that both omega-3s and healthy omega-6s are good for us, what's the point of obsessing over a ratio that divides a good thing by another good thing? It just doesn't really add up anymore. So this is where the theory hits the real world, our food. Because when you actually try to apply this ratio rule to what you eat, you see just how impractical it all is. Just take a look at these nuts and seeds, all foods that we think of as healthy. The omega-6 to omega-3 ratios are just all over the place. I mean, some are low, some are high, and some are, well, they're astronomical. Trying to balance all that in your head is a recipe for disaster. Okay, for instance, let's look at walnuts. They're famous for being a great source of omega-3s, and sure enough, their ratio is a pretty good 4.2-to-1. That fits right into that ideal range we were told about. So far, so good. But now, look at almonds, another super healthy nut, right? While its ratio is a jaw-dropping 2010-to-1. If you only cared about the ratio, you'd think almonds were one of the worst foods on the planet. And that's when you know that focusing only on the ratio is just totally misleading. So if the ratio is a flawed, confusing mess, what's the alternative? Well, luckily, the new approach is way, way simpler and much more effective. The new thinking is refreshingly simple. It's not about chasing some magical ratio. It's just about getting enough of the right stuff. And the bottom line is, most of us are just not getting enough omega-3s. So here's the new plan. It's super simple. Step 1, add more omega-3s to your diet. Step 2,
Don't stress about cutting out healthy omega-6s. The goal isn't to subtract one thing, it's to add another. Just focus on adding more omega-3s. That's it.
And how do you do that? It's pretty easy. You've got amazing sources like oily fish, think salmon and sardines. Or if you're plant-based, things like chia seeds, flax seeds, walnuts, and hemp seeds are fantastic. Seriously, a spoonful of chia seeds in your yogurt or a handful of walnuts as a snack can make a huge difference. So we can all stop stressing about doing the math. The science really suggests we should throw out that old, confusing question about ratios and just replace it with a much simpler, more powerful one. Am I getting enough omega-3s? That simple change in focus, that might be the real key to all the health benefits we were looking for in the first place. All right, if you've ever tried to eat healthier, you have probably been told you need to balance your omega-3 and omega-6 fats. It's a topic that can get super confusing, right? You hear about ideal ratios, good fats, bad fats. So today, we're gonna cut through all that noise and find out what the science really says. Let's get into it. So here's the question we've all been wrestling with. Is the ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 fats, like, the secret key to better health? For ages, it seemed like the answer was a clear yes. But, as you're about to see, the science has definitely moved on.